Hello everyone. A brief introduction about myself. My name is Prakash, and I have given 5 mains and 2 interviews. I will today introduce about GS paper 2 syllabus. So, talking about GS paper 2, GS paper 2 of civil services exam is basically divided in 5 sections. The first is constitution. Second part is polity. Then comes the governance part. Then there is social justice. And the last part is international relations. Fine. For the sake of easiness, these two are combined as one part and these two are combined as one part. Fine. So broadly, there are 3 sections in your GS paper 2: constitution and polity, then governance and social justice, and the third part is international relations. Now we will start with first part, that is polity and constitution. Polity and constitution is perhaps the most important part in GS paper 2, and this is also the part from where maximum number of questions come in the exam. So talking about polity syllabus, the first part is Indian Constitution. In the Indian Constitution, it talks about historical underpinnings, in historical underpinnings, you will find that the development of constitution in India started from 1773 Regulating Act and culminated with 1947 Act of Independence. And in this, the most important development is Government of India Act 1935. So Government of India Act 1935 act as a skeleton to our Constitution of India. So we'll find the major parts of our Constitution are taken from Government of India 1935. Then there is Act of 1909, then Act of 1919. So these are the important developments in the historical underpinning. Then there is constitution making. That is the developments when the Constituent Assembly was formed. Fine. Then there is salient features. So what are the salient features of the Constitution? Salient features can be preamble, fundamental rights, DPSP, that is directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties, amending procedures, in amending procedures you will see how our constitution is flexible as well as rigid. So our constitution is basically a adopts a golden mean between rigid and a flexible constitution. Then you will see a basic structure doctrine. This doctrine was given by Supreme Court in 1973 in Keshavanand Bharati case. Fine. So these are the broad salient features of the constitution, and when we will study polity, we will come across many more salient features of the constitution. It is not possible to discuss everything here. Fine. Coming to this was the first part, and the second part under Indian polity and constitution are functions and responsibilities of union and states. So basically, the function and responsibilities of union and states are regulating, development functions, then there is service providing functions, fine. The most important perhaps part in the syllabus of polity and constitution is the first part, that is Indian constitution and salient features. Then there is in the functions and responsibilities of union and states, there is interrelationship between union and states and the local governments. Then there are issues with financial devolution. Fine. Coming to the third part under the syllabus of polity and constitution, it is the issues and challenges related to federal structure. If you talk about the union and the state, there are many relations. The first is administrative, second is legislative, then there is financial relations. So there are many issues and challenges related to this federal structure, that is administrative, legislative, and financial relations. Then there are issues of misuse of Article 365, that is imposition of president's rule. Fine. If you talk about finances, there are poor devolution of finances from union to state. So states always complain about less devolution of finances, or rather reduced devolution of finances over time. Fine. Then coming to the next part. Fourth part is separation of three organs of state. So three organs are legislature, executive, and the judiciary. So in India, there is the separation is not watertight. There is also interdependence between the three organs of the state, and therefore there are also issues between these three organs. For example, legislature makes law, but judiciary can struck down that law. Then judiciary is accused of judicial activism, judicial overreach. So in separation of three organs, we will discuss about the three organs of the state and how much they are separated and how much they are interdependent. Fine. Then there is dispute redressal mechanism. Of course, there is judiciary, but there is something called as ADR, alternate dispute redressal mechanism. There are Gram Nyayalayas. So, in addition to judiciary, there are also mechanisms through which public grievances are addressed. For example, fast track courts for the trial of political crimes. Okay. Sixth is comparison of Indian Constitution with major constitutions of world. Comparison of Indian Constitution. So if we talk about comparison of Indian Constitution, the questions will come basically about a constitution which are similar to that of India, or from where India has sourced its large part of the constitution. So it can be Constitution of Britain. So far only. Then there is United States. So if you see the questions in the past years, in this part, comparison part, only two major type of questions have been found. The first, that compares Indian Constitution with Britain. Then the second part, that compares Indian Constitution with that of the Constitution of United States. Fine. Seventh part is Parliament and State Legislature. Parliament and State Legislature. Then there are powers of Parliament and State Legislature, functions. Fine. Their conduct of business. It means parliamentary proceedings. Then there are privileges of MPs and MLAs. Fine. So in this part, you will perhaps this is the lengthiest part to study, and you will learn everything about Parliament, how the Parliament is summoned, how the businesses of the Parliament are conducted. For instance, how the laws are made. What are the various steps through which laws are made in the Parliament? Then there is structure, organization, and functioning of the executive. Fine. Executive means starting from President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers. So they form the part of the executive. Even governors and their counterparts at the level of state, that is governor, chief minister, council of ministers, attorney general. So they form the part of executive. Here there is also attorney general of India. Fine. Then you will, other part is judiciary, Supreme Court, High Court, district courts. So you will study the organization of courts, how their business is conducted, various developments in the Supreme Court, various judgments passed by the Supreme Court, and how they affect the governance process in the country. Fine. And the most crucial point in the judiciary is that independence of judiciary, judicial activism, then judicial overreach. Fine. So these are the issues in the chapter of judiciary. Then there is local governments, gram panchayats, municipalities, after 73rd and 74th amendment to the constitution, they now have constitutional recognition, and we will see how the gram panchayats business are conducted at the level of villages and municipalities also. So in this part you will come to know the different aspects of local governments, their functions, functionaries, how they receive their finances. And in local governments, we will also study about State Election Commission, State Finance Commission. So these are the developments in local government part. Then there is ministries and departments. So far, not much questions have been framed from this part, because this can include central secretariat, cabinet secretary, uh, chief secretary, but till date this is perhaps the least important. And the next part is pressure groups. You will learn about different types of pressure groups, formal, informal. For example, uh, FICI. FICI is a kind of pressure group. That is the pressure group of business organizations. Okay. And you will see how they are different from political parties. Even Kisan morchas are also a kind of pressure group who exert their pressure on the government to bring certain laws or to withdraw certain kind of laws. Fine. Then there is salient features of representation of People's Act. This is perhaps one of the most important part in your polity syllabus. It basically talks about elections, electoral reforms, and also financing elections. So there is a new development in the past 4-5 years, that's electoral bonds. So every year, one type or the other, one question will be formed from this part. Fine. Then there is appointment to various constitutional courts. Or constitutional posts and constitutional bodies. So what are constitutional posts and constitutional bodies? It can be Comptroller and Auditor General of India, UPSC itself, or appointment to election commission, appointment of election commissioners. And you will see in this their appointments plus their functions, responsibilities, and reforms needed. For instance, there is a well-defined procedure of appointing a CAG. There is a selection committee which decides that which person is to be appointed. But in case of UPSC, it is the executive which has sole authority of appointing UPSC members, or even that of members of the election commission. So it talks about reforms needed so as to form a similar kind of committee to appoint members of UPSC election commission. Then there is statutory bodies, regulatory bodies, and quasi-judicial bodies. Fine. In this you will see, let's say SEBI, that regulates stock market. Then there is NHRC. NHRC is statutory body. Fine. Then at the state level there is State Human Rights Commission. So Human Rights Commission, whether it is Minority Commission, then there is commissions related to SCs, STs. So these are all regulatory statutory bodies. Fine. and we will discuss in detail their functions and responsibilities, what reforms are needed, and what is the lacuna in these bodies. So this basically covers your polity and governance. Now we will see what are the sources. This is the perhaps the most important part of discussing your syllabus. What are the sources of from where we will learn polity and constitution. The most popular source for reading polity and constitution is, of course, you must be familiar with this name, M. Lakshmikant. Fine. M. Lakshmikant is most preferable because it provides your understanding of the constitution and polity in a very easy and lucid language. So M. Lakshmikant is, we can say that it is a gist of the constitution. Fine. So your preferable source should be M. Lakshmikant. Then if you want to dig deeper, then there is D.D. Basu. So D.D. Basu, M. Lakshmikant is basically factual. D.D. Basu is analytical, also analytical. In addition to factual, it's also analytical plus detailed. So if you are learning polity, first you go with M. Lakshmikant, read this book in detail, and only when you have at least 2 to 3 reading of Lakshmikant, you should go for D.D. Basu. Because see, D.D. Basu is not easy to learn who are new to this preparation of civil services. Because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of legal language is used here. So it becomes difficult for you to comprehend and assimilate the knowledge. So first you go with M. Lakshmikant, then D.D. Basu, and of course, let me introduce you something else also. And there's one more book of NCERT, that is Indian Constitution at Work. My recommendation is that first you go through this NCERT book. This is NCERT of 11th class. First you go with Indian Constitution at Work, then you go with M. Lakshmikant, then you should approach D.D. Basu. So then first in the priority list is NCERT Indian Constitution at Work. In Indian Constitution at Work, we will learn about rights, fine, legislature, executive, judiciary, then we will also see federalism, local governments, so these are the major parts that you will cover in this NCERT. So once you go through this NCERT, you will have a preliminary and very good understanding of the Indian Constitution and what Indian polity is all about. So once you have exposed yourself to the legal and political aspects of India, then you can go with M. Lakshmikant. Then, in addition to this, you should have there are certain reports that have come in the past few decades that you should be familiar with their recommendations so as to give credence to your answer writing practice. Let's say Sarkariya Commission, Then there is Panchi Commission. These both are reports. So if you have idea about the recommendations of these two commissions, you can suggest a way forward or understand the issue more substantially while writing a mains answer. Then there is Supreme Court judgments. Giving reference to Supreme Court judgment in your mains answer can provide substance or credence to your answer. Fine. And to there's one website I would like to recommend, that's prs.org. In this website, you will find very synopsis of bills and laws. Then you will also find synopsis of parliamentary standing committee reports. So if you want to make yourself familiar with any bill, any law, you should go on this website, type the name, and you will find a very crisp note of every bill and law. And what you need is a knowledge about the current developments, that the current bills which are important for the governance of the country, and parliamentary standing committee report. If you see, this is very important. In the past, I have gone through this website and seen that they have been uploading parliamentary standing committee reports from the past 10-15 years, and you will find reports on almost every matter, whether it is political, economic, governance. So every department of the government has parliamentary standing committee or departmental standing committee. So when we come across these reports, you can put them in your answers, or you can maintain a small diary where you will have 1 or 2 line recommendations of committee reports. Fine. Then two important thing to note for current affairs is that you have to read newspapers on a daily basis, and the most important newspaper for civil service preparation is The Hindu. Fine. So in The Hindu, avoid political, you read political news, but don't go much deeper into it. What you have to read in The Hindu is, before reading The Hindu, you should have clarity about the syllabus. Then you will be able to identify which news is important for you and which is not. So basically, read the important news, then editorial and opinions. Initially, you will find difficult to read them because they are lengthy and we don't have habit of reading editorials and opinions. So start with one at least. Then in few days, read the entire editorial and opinion and try to extract only the relevant information from editorials. It is not possible to write all the information available there in the opinions, but you should read them and try to extract only relevant information from the editorial and opinion pages. Then there is Indian Express. Indian Express is more important for international relations or governance and agriculture. So your priority should be The Hindu, then Indian Express. Okay. Talking about the exam relevance of polity and constitution part for your exam, if you see, first is pre. In pre, every year you will find from 14 to 22 questions in your pre-exam every year. And The interesting part is that polity and constitution part is perhaps the easiest part to understand in your entire syllabus of GS paper. If you read it properly, give it time, then perhaps it will become the most scoring part in your pre-paper. And why? Because they garner our most interest when we prepare for civil services, and 14 and 22 or 14 to 22 questions means somewhere 28 to 44 number out of 100, sorry, 200. So if we are prepared well, then you will be able to secure, if there are, let's say there are 20 questions, you can very easily answer 60 to 70 questions. Those who are prepared well, they can even answer the entire 20 questions. Fine. So for the pre-part, polity and constitution is very important. In fact, if you see the entire GS paper 2 syllabus, it is only the polity part from where the questions come in the pre-exam. In the mains exam, yes, there is weightage for all the three parts, that is polity, social justice and IR. But in mains, only polity and governance, polity and constitution have major importance. If at all there is a question from social justice part, let's say health education or any development with FCRA, they will come as a current affairs questions, not as static questions. And similarly with international relations, if let's say the development in Eastern Europe, Ukraine crisis, then they will come as current affairs questions or geographical questions. Let's say there is, if there is development in Ukraine, around Ukraine borders Black Sea, so they will ask which all countries border Black Sea. Fine. So we cannot say that these questions are from international relations. Okay. So if at all questions are there from international part, they will come as current affairs, and same thing applies to social justice part. So prepare this static part very well, and you will be able to secure maximum number from this part in your pre-exam. Talking about mains exam, mains exam we will analyze. I have analysis of questions that have come in mains from 2030 till 2022. In this, the questions from polity part have had weightage from 90 numbers to 125. From the past 2 years, that is 21-22, questions from polity and constitution part have had weightage of 125 numbers. Okay, so you can see the importance of polity and constitution part from here. And the good thing is that once you have prepared well, your foundation is strong, you have good understanding of current developments, then you will able to easily score a good mark in polity part. Fine. And one thing more is that from 2013 till 2022, the importance of polity in mains exam has increased. For example, earlier it was around 90 to 100. Then in 2018 to 2020, the weightage was 115. Then the weightage is, in the past 2 years, the weightage of polity was 125 marks. Fine. So what we saw here, first we saw the syllabus. Please get the syllabus from wherever you can. Okay. So it is easy to get the syllabus. Then the most important part of our discussion is the sources of your reading. First part is Indian Constitutional Network, then NCERT. First go with the NCERT, then M. Lakshmikant, then you will go for DD Basu. Fine. To secure good marks in your mains exam, these are the two commissions whose recommendations you should have at least, let's say, 2-3 pages of synopsis regarding every aspect of the polity. So let's say there is legislature, executive, judiciary, or finance commission, or federal relations. These commissions have recommended. Actually, these commissions were formed to give their recommendations on federal relations and other issues. So make a synopsis of the reports of 3, 4, 5 pages and keep it in your diary, and use this one or two line recommendations wherever you can. Make a habit of daily reading the Hindu. In the beginning, it may take, let's say, 2 to 2.5 hours. Do spend at least 1.5 hours on newspapers and 1 hour on making notes from the newspaper. Fine. Coming to the second major part of GS paper 2 syllabus, that is social justice. In social justice, you will see the development process and the development industry. Means the first part in social justice is development process and development industries. Development industries means all the stakeholders that are relevant in the development of the country. So there are NGOs, self-help groups, donors, charities. So the most important in this is that of NGOs, self-help groups, civil society. Fine. Every year you will find one question from these two parts, though in 2022 they did not ask, but they are the most important topics, NGOs and self-help groups, from the point of examination. Then there is, this was number 1. Then this welfare scheme. Welfare scheme related to vulnerable sections of the country. Then these welfare schemes are made by both center and state. So in this you will see what are the performance of these schemes, what issues they are facing, whether they are successful or not, and what reforms are required to improve the inclusivity aspect of welfare schemes by center and state. Okay. And talking about the welfare section, there are also constitutional and regulatory bodies related with the welfare of the vulnerable sections. Let's say National Commission for Scheduled Caste, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. Then there is Commission for Minorities, Women, people with disabilities. So you will come to understand about the welfare in the vulnerable section. You will understand about welfare schemes related to them and the constitutional or statutory bodies that are there to look after the welfare of the vulnerable section of the country. Fine. Third part, you will see education, healthcare, and human resource. When you read the social justice part, education and healthcare are perhaps the lengthiest to read, and I would recommend you that please be known to the current developments in the country, the sector of education and healthcare, because the questions that are framed from these are largely from current affairs. Fine. Then there is the fourth part in this is poverty and hunger. The status of poverty, the state of poverty and hunger in the country, and the government effort towards eliminating poverty and hunger in the country, and why, despite all the efforts in the past 75 years, we still have perhaps the largest number of people below poverty line. Talking the absolute about the absolute numbers. Fine. So the important part in this social justice is first NGOs, fine, then health and education, then poverty and hunger. Regarding welfare schemes, the question on welfare schemes mostly will come from current affairs part, and here also current affairs part. Poverty and hunger, prepare a 3-4 page note for both poverty and hunger, and you will be able to cover it in very comprehensive manner. Fine. I will discuss the resources of social justice part and governance part together. Coming to the governance part, in governance, there is one, the first part is government policies and interventions in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. Again, if any question comes from this part, it will come from current affairs. So there are plethora of government policies and programs, and there are many issues associated with them, but they will mostly come from current affairs part. Okay, and you will see that there is a similarity, there is a pattern in various government schemes. For example, if you say, let's say, e-governance, digital India. So there are issues associated with digital India, and the issues associated with digital India can also be linked with Manrega. So this will come from current affairs, and there is a pattern in various schemes and what issues they face and what reforms are required. So you have to basically understand what are the various issues government schemes are facing, and you will be able to answer this part very easily. Then there is transparency, accountability, in this governance part. Before I introduce about this syllabus, transparency and accountability, first let me introduce with e-governance. Perhaps the easiest part in the entire syllabus of GS paper 2. This is very static. A simple 2-3 page notes will suffice. Okay, so this is about application, success, limitation. So there is one static note of this e-governance, and the questions are framed around that only. In e-governance, you will learn about ICT, information communication technology. Let's say, for example, Digital India Initiative, payments, digital payments. Fine. Then there's Citizen Charter. Again, very easy to prepare, and every 2-3 years there is a question from Citizen Charter. About Citizen Charter, you will also learn in GS paper 4 ethics syllabus. Then there is transparency and accountability. These two terms are interlinked. You cannot enforce accountability unless there is transparency. So, transparency, you will come to know about Right to Information Act, implementation issues in RTI Act, and what reforms are required. Then through RTI, you will also learn about Chief Information Commission, what issues are related with this body. I think in 2020 mains, the question was there. And why? Because the government made certain amendments to the appointment of Chief Information Commission, and therefore the question was asked in the exam. Fine. So, and the fifth part in the governance is role of civil services. Role of civil servants, civil services in democracy. Fine. So, social justice is perhaps the easiest to prepare in GS paper 2, and also because these are static topics, and every year you will find that somewhere between 50 to 70 number of questions, out of 250 in mains, questions will come from here. And the strategy to prepare for the social justice and governance part is that first is that you should make Google it, or wherever you find a source for this syllabus part, prepare a 2-3 page note on each topic. Let's say, for example, NGOs, then you will see FCRA within the NGO topic. Then there are self-help groups, citizen charter, e-governance, transparency and accountability, RTI, role of civil services in democracy. So prepare a 2-3 page note on each topic from wherever you can find the source of it. There is plethora of sources available on the Google or in the market. So take them and prepare a 2-3 page note on each of them. Firstly. Secondly, there is something called a second ARC, Administrative Reform Commission. This commission gave its report in 2007, but even after 15 years, its recommendations are as relevant today as they were in 2007. Okay, there are a total of 15 reports that second ARC gave. However, you don't need to go through all the reports. The most important are, let's say, 7 or 8 reports that are important for you, and I'll explain you which report is important for what. So, talking about the second ARCs are important for, they are largely important for social justice part, but there are also some reports that are relevant for your polity and governance part. For example, there are talks about various statutory and regulatory bodies by the ARC. So their recommendations, their diagnosis of the problems of those bodies can become important for understanding. Fine. The first report of ARC is regarding RTI, that is transparency. Since it talks about transparency, it also becomes important for accountability. Since it is about RTI, it also talks about Chief Information Commission. Fine. So, first is about RTI, transparency, accountability, CIC. The second report is about Second report is not important. Come to the fourth report, that is ethics in governance. Fine. In this, you will see about electoral reforms, anti-defection law in the constitution. Then it talks about Lok Adalat. Remember the alternative dispute redressal mechanism. Lok Adalats become important there. This fourth report is more important for your GS paper 4. So for the purpose of social justice or GS paper 2, you can prefer to skip it, but read it for the purpose of GS paper 4. Fine. The next most important is sixth report. It is about local governance. So it is both about rural and urban. It is comprehensive report, and once you read this report, you need not read anything about local and urban government, because even if there is an article in the newspaper, the substance of that article has been already covered in this report. Okay. In the last, I will say how a technique to read this report, because see, these reports are somewhere between 100 to 300-400 pages. So they are exhaustive and very technical. They become also technical at times. So you will find difficulty in reading the entire report. So there is a way to read this report and make a synopsis of the recommendations. Fine. The next important report is seventh report, that is capacity building. Capacity building for conflict resolution. So in this report, you will see also chapters on land reforms and all. But in this report, you have to read chapters only on issues related to SCs, STs, other backward classes. Fine. So limit yourself to only these chapters, not the entire report. Then there is 10th report. It is about, ninth report. This talks about social capital. In this, you will come to know in detail about civil society, charitable organizations directly related to your syllabus, social justice, NGOs, self-help groups, and cooperatives. Part of your polity. Local governance. Fine. Then the next important report is 10. This is refurbished public administration. In this, you will see a very detailed report about civil services, why we need civil services, the recruitment, training, appointment, transfers, what are the issues facing civil services, the civil servants' relations with the political executive, and what principles on which civil services should be based. So this is a very comprehensive report on civil services and very interesting also. You can find a lot of content about civil services, the role of civil services in democracy from this report. Then the next is 11th report. This is about e-governance. Fine. E-governance, a direct topic from social justice part. It talks about concept of e-governance, initiatives, what all initiatives have been taken in various states. Initiative, if there's any scheme, let's say Meghdut, you can put that scheme in your answer. Core principle of e-governance. Fine. Then there is reforms required in the e-governance of country. Even though the reforms were suggested in 2007 and there has been a lot of developments in the e-governance in the country, in fact positive developments, but still you can use these recommendations to suggest reforms in your mains answer. Fine. Then the last report that is important is 12th report. This is citizen centric administration. Fine. Citizen centric administration. In this you will learn about citizen charters, a topic from your social justice governance part. Then it talks about participation, participation of people at the grassroots level in the governance process. Then decentralization, a very familiar term. Fine. Then there is special institutional mechanism for vulnerable sections. Okay. So in citizen charter, citizen centric administration, we will learn about citizen charters, participation at local level in the governance process, decentralization, what are the issues government is facing in decentralization of the governance process, special institutional mechanism for vulnerable sections. See, in all these reports, these are, let's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So a total of 8 ARCs are important for you. Please note down these ARCs. Fine. Second thing, in all these ARCs, look at the index. First of all, how to read them? Look at the index. Find which syllabus. You have clarity about the syllabus. Which part of the index is important for you, and directly go to that chapter. Even then, if you find it difficult to read because they are lengthy indeed, so what you have to do is, I'm assuming that you have already prepare a 2-3 pages notes on each topic of social justice and governance. Fine. Then go to those specific chapters in ARCs which are important for your syllabus and make a 1-page synopsis of recommendations. At the end of each chapter, there is a summary of recommendations. So in those recommendations, you should make a 1-page synopsis, 1-page synopsis of recommendations, and those recommendations which you think that they are important for you to quote in the exam. Okay. So for each topic, for let's say there is local governance, you can make 1-page synopsis of recommendations that what reforms are required in the local governance. Let's say, for example, related with functions, state governments have not devolved all the functions mandated by the constitution to the local governments. Then there are issues of functionaries. Then local governments are not able to generate revenue for their smooth functioning. So all these recommendations are there, and you have to make 1 or 2-page recommendations from each of these ARCs. So in all, I think if there are 8 ARCs, a 20-page synopsis is more than sufficient to lend credence to your answer in mains. Fine. So for social justice and governance, you need not refer to any book. Prepare a current, prepare a 2-3 page note. Then be familiar with the current developments. Talking about social justice and governance, I would like to suggest one more source. There is a document of Niti Aayog called as Strategy for New India at 75. So this document basically talks about what reforms are required to attain a certain level of development by the time India completes 75 years of its independence. We know that India has already completed in 2022 75 years of independence, but still the recommendations, the issues, the diagnosis and recommendations of Niti Aayog are still relevant. So in this report, you'll find 4 sections, but only 2 sections are important for the social justice and governance part. The rest can be important for your economy, that is GS3. This is inclusion. First, second is governance. In inclusion, you will come to know about education, health, nutrition, gender, then vulnerable sections, whether they are senior citizens, people with disabilities, SC, STs, minorities. In this report, inclusion is 3rd part, governance is 4th part. In governance, you'll come to know about issues faced by Northeast region. There is the 7 sisters. Then it talks about legal, judicial, and police reforms, important from the perspective of polity and constitution. Then it also talks about civil services reforms, relevant for the syllabus, where it talks about role of civil services in democracy. So when we are talking about this role of civil services in democracy, we are also talking about the reforms required to improve the functioning of the civil services in the country. Then there is urban governance, important in your polity syllabus, local governments. Fine. Then there is data-led governance and policy making. Fine. So when you are preparing your social justice part and governance, recommend first you should make a 2-3 page notes and go through these ARCs and this report. You will find sufficient content to write a very good answer from this part. And the exam relevance of this part is somewhere between, for mains, it is between 50 to 65 marks out of 200. For pre, questions will be framed from current affairs. Okay. Coming to the last section, that is international relations. Fine. In international relations, the first part is India and its neighborhood. India and its neighborhood, there are 7-8 countries around India, and India has adopted a neighbor first policy. So there is China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar. So these are neighbors of India. Then if since the topic is about neighborhood, we also use the term extended neighborhood. Then it becomes, first is the immediate periphery, immediate neighbors. You know very well who all are immediate neighbors. Fine. Then in extended neighborhood, we can talk about West Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia. Fine. So these are all, these all can come under the first part, that is India, its neighbors. Let's say in Central Asia there are Central Asian republics, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all. In Southeast Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and you know the immediate neighbors. So this is basically about bilateral relations. Fine. Then the second part under international relations is bilateral regional and global groupings and agreements that involve India and or affecting India's bilateral regional and global groupings that affect India's interest. So which are all regional and global groupings that affect India's interest? Let's start with SAARC. Then there is BIMSTEC. ASEAN, G20, G7. So these are all regional global groupings that affect India's interest. Then third part is effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries. Policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India. Fine. So in this, basically, see, there are 7 major developed countries. Which is 7? US, UK, France, Russia, China, Israel, Japan. So these are the major developed countries, and every year you will find at least one question from this related to these 3 major powers. So this is very important. Every year you will find at least one question from them. Okay. Then the fourth part is Indian diaspora. So there is also safety and welfare of Indian diaspora. There is also policy by Indian government how diaspora help India to project its soft power in the outer world. Diasporas are mainly concentrated in Gulf countries, US and Europe. So one important part is Indian diaspora. Then there is important international institutions with which India is associated, and they affect Indian development. So there are different institutions, their mandate, their functioning, how their policies affect India. Fine. So which are the major institutions, international institutions? IMF, World Bank, uh, United Nations, most important, UNEP, and all other agencies of United Nations, UNEP, UNFCCC. Okay. So one more important institution, WTO, World Trade Organization. So these are the important international institutions, and again every year you will find one question from this part. One question from major powers, that is developed countries, one question from uh, important international institutions, one question from India and its neighborhood. Fine. Then there is also sixth part, this miscellaneous. This can be disarmament, climate change, or topics related to terrorism, global governance. In this international institutions, there is also issues of reforming these bodies. So a major part of your reading of international institution is also reforming these bodies. So these are the major so this was your syllabus of international relations part, India and its neighborhood, bilateral, regional and international groupings that affect India, in which BRICS, ASEAN, SAARC, BIMSTEC, G20, G7, these are all important institutions. Then there is developed and developing countries and their policies and politics, how they affect India. For instance, in 2020 May, there was a question about how the defense relations of India with US and Russia, which one is most important, or have India is better placed between Russia and US with respect to defense relations. Fine. Then there is important international institutions and miscellaneous topics. So see, one way to go, talking about sources, one way to approach international part is to prepare note on each and every topic of international relations part. Fine. But it can become exhaustive. Okay. For you to prepare so much note, what I would suggest is that read current affairs carefully. If you have read current affairs carefully, you will be able to easily answer each and every question of international relations. What you have to do is that, let's say, few notes you need to prepare. Let's say, for example, I talked about major developed countries. There is one question every year from this. So prepare a note about each of the 7 countries and see which country is making most of the news which is related to India. There is a chance that that country will only come in the paper. So regarding neighborhood, first prepare a note about 7 developed countries. Second, prepare a note about India's immediate neighbors. These two notes preparation for these two parts is important, and add all the current developments. So for this, for current affairs, you need to read Indian Express. Indian Express comprehensively covers all the international news very well. There are also good number of articles, very content-rich articles in Indian Express related to international affairs. So read in Indian Express for international relations. Prepare notes for 7 developed countries, as I talked about. US, UK, France, Russia, China, Israel, Japan. Fine. Prepare a note about India's neighborhood. Then see all the current developments. From there, you will be able to figure out which questions on which topic will come in the mains. So you will be able to answer it very well. Reading about current affairs, always make notes of relevant content. So there can be a, let's say, 2000 word article or 1500 word article. It can happen that you need only 100 words of content out of it. Read the entire article for the sake of understanding and developing your perspective, but extract only relevant information from that article. You need not mug up all the entire article. Only extract the relevant information, and try to maintain a diary, or let's say you have made a note on US. Fine, you have prepared a note on A4 sheet. Then add a blank A4 sheet with the notes on US, and keep adding all the current affairs on these notes. From on your static notes, you should add the development from the current affairs. Fine. So in this way, you will prepare a comprehensive. You will be able to prepare international relations comprehensively. Regarding important international institutions, Indian diaspora, and regional global groupings, they will come from current affairs. The static part, I'm not about the static part as such, but there is also pattern in which the questions about developed countries are asked. See, so you have to basically analyze all the past year question papers. One thing more important, since I talked about question papers, before you start preparation for any exam, you should have two things before you. First, syllabus. Second is question paper. For syllabus, you should have understanding about the sources of your syllabus, and you should also have understanding about the analysis of the question paper, the pattern with which questions are coming. Okay, so these two things are very important for the strategy of your preparation. Have detailed understanding of your syllabus and corresponding sources. Then a very good analysis, in-depth analysis of question papers. Then you will be able to figure out which kind of questions from which part of the syllabus next time the question can be framed, and you will be able to predict it to a great extent in the question paper. Fine. So we have discussed GS paper 2 today. The first part is polity. Fine. So in polity, first you should read NCRT, then M. Lakshmikant, then D.D. Basu, reports like Sarkariya Commission, Panchi Commission, Supreme Court judgments. In newspapers, read The Hindu. Do visit prs.org to gain whatever important information you can from there. Fine. Then the social justice part, make a 2-3 page note on each of the topics. refer to ARCs and Niti Aayog document to extract whatever relevant information, diagnosis or recommendations from there. Fine. Again, the current developments are important for social justice and governance part also. Then there is international relations. In international relations, your major focus should be on newspapers. Fine. As I have discussed, make a note on the 7 developed countries and India's neighbors, and keep updating your notes on current affairs. Fine. So this is all in this GS paper 2 discussion. Syllabus orientation. Thank you very much.